Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Meadows and Makers podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd, and today I have a special guest for you guys. This is John Tietjen. He is a friend of mine from we met through our Freedom Cell meetups in the local area, and John's got a cool project called the TradfitoDefi podcast that we're going to be talking about tonight. And John's also got a homestead, and he is raising some grass-fed cattle right now. And so we're going to go through a bunch of stuff. But welcome to the show, John. How are you doing today?
Thanks a lot, Greg. I'm really looking forward to this. This is kind of an intersection of two of my favorite things to talk about, which is crypto and raising cows and homesteading and being prepared. The Liberty Movement. There's just tons of stuff that all of this kind of comes together, and so I think it's rather unique. We can sit here and talk about it.
Awesome, man. So, for all my guests, I typically ask, a little bit about how you got on the path that you're currently going on and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, that's kind of interesting. I was kind of thinking about that today and how I'd kind of like how did I get where I am today? It goes back kind of far. I'm a military brat, so I moved around quite a bit in my younger years. Went to college, did the corporate gig, and at some point I was trying to think about what set me on the path towards what I'm doing now, and I quit smoking and I started running, and ran marathons and stuff like that, and along the way when you do stuff like that you go, well, you know what, I'm gonna have to, what's the healthiest thing for me to do, how can my body be the best it can be, and so you look into diets and you look into exercise programs and so on and so forth. So I kind of started on the path and I kind of really got in tune with the paleo movement early on back in the late 2000s with Rob Wolf. He's one of the guys that influenced me, and Mark Sisson, and kind of those early adopters of that type of lifestyle and eating. And it just went from there. It went to keto. It went to all the other things. And what it really came down to is the quality of food that I was eating. Getting away from processed food. And so where does my food come from? Where is the best source of food? Where do I get the, well, then I'm, listening, well, grass-fed beef is probably the best thing for you to eat, and just kind of going through that. And I'm finally saying, a number of things also affected me along the way. The financial crisis got my attention. In 2010, I was living in Nashville during a flood, and that
Oh, you were
impact,
living in Nashville at the time of that big
yeah,
flood?
and that impacted me because I had an opportunity to help some people out that had gotten flooded. I didn't sustain any damage, but helping people who basically lost everything in the flood and saw how attached they were to their possessions and the things that they had. It just destroyed them. And I looked and I just kind of stepped back and go, I don't really ever want to be so attached to material things and possessions, you know, like these people are. I said, I don't want to, if I lose everything, I don't want it to be very much. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not that I don't enjoy nice things. It's not that I don't want to have money. I don't want to be a pauper or a monk, but I don't want to have that spiritual, uh, mental, emotional attachment to things. I still want to have some of them, but if I lose them, I really don't care. I do care, but I don't want it to wreck me. So all these things, and that kind of set me on a path of, self-reliance, the liberty movement, and things like that. So all these things culminated: health, personal freedom, self-sustainability, treating the environment properly, raising animals in a way that honors them and honors the land that they're raised on. So that kind of really got me to where I am in that part of my life. At least as far as that goes. As far as cryptocurrency and things like that, that that was another thing I that was more on a privacy. I started out on the privacy side with privacy coins and things like that, and I'm like, yeah, our money is very important and it's at risk, and maybe there's a way of trying to be effective with your money. And cryptocurrency came along, and I started studying that, and that just one thing, it kind of snowballed after that because everything was all coming together under one roof. And I dabbled in a lot of different things in cryptocurrency, and I joined a newsletter, Bankless, which is their approach is to try to get everybody to basically do away with banks, right, and replace it with cryptocurrency. So
Yeah.
that's basically their charge to do. And one day they had in their forum, because I belong to their newsletter, so it's kind of a private forum. It's like, so if you could give up your job today and work in the crypto industry, would you? And a lot of like, yeah, sure, I would. And so one guy that was on there, we had our background in the traditional finance industry, which I had been working in for about 20 years, and he did too. And we just in the forums like, well, why don't we start a Telegram channel and a Discord group that basically is trying to transition people from traditional finance to DeFi, to a decentralized finance world. And so that's been about a year. I think it's been right around a year. I think we have our anniversary coming. It's about a year ago, and we've had the Telegram channel. We've had Discord. We started a podcast. We're a lot of really interesting people that we meet. The Telegram is by invite only, and some really high level people from the industry have joined. They jump in on conversations. People all working in the industry, very knowledgeable, trustworthy people, and it's a great place incubator of ideas. And so we've just continued on that, and we want, and it's not just do you want to work in the crypto industry, but it's getting people from that traditional finance mindset to a decentralized one. And whether you're looking for a job or just looking to learn and want to get to that way of life, we kind of try to facilitate that. And we have a group call every Friday afternoon to talk about the issues of the week, and some people a lot smarter than me on there, and I learn a lot by doing that. And the thing was for me, it's cryptocurrency is more for I shouldn't say more for younger people. They're more likely to be interested in it. And so I'm 61 years old,
Yeah.
and so I'm the boomer in the group, right?
That's what I was about to say, that we give you a hard time for being a boomer, but
You know,
there's a lot of older people that are mystified by the crypto space.
right.
They can't wrap their
And
head around it.
and I was able to wrap my head, and I get it, right? And so, but one thing is that when I talked to Tyler, my partner that we started the group out with, I said, and one of the first times I talked to him, I said, I feel like, the boomer generation, they get a bad rap, but justifiably so. We bled the system dry, and it's all sitting in our retirement account right now. And while everybody is probably not going to get Social Security, they're probably, they've kind of been screwed out of a lot of opportunities that we took for granted and we took advantage of.
But on the other hand, I kind of see that the boomers might be suckered into all their eggs in one basket in the traditional
Yes.
finance,
Yeah.
and they might end up taking all that away in some kind of currency reset or
Well, or it just even
CBDC, bring out a CBDC, and guess what? We got to take from your 401k or something to
well,
reset the system
and
or something like that.
oh,
I'm
oh,
not
that's
saying
very
that's going to happen, but it could be a possibility.
it's very possible. But so it was my opportunity to participate and give back to a younger generation that is looking for an opportunity, and that opportunity is cryptocurrency. That opportunity isn't the stock market. It's not traditional finance. It's not working at a bank. It's not working, on Wall Street. It's the and so I wanted to foster that and participate as much as I could and help people out because I have a good understanding of the traditional finance world and you know currency is currency, whether it's digital or not. And there's certain things that you just you just can't change about it. There's supply and demand and inflation and deflation and things like that. That regardless of whether it's a cryptocurrency or the U.S. dollar, it all works kind of the same way.
The,
Obviously, with the U.S. dollar, it's been tinkered with by the Fed and the government and poor fiscal policy and ridiculous things that go on that the government does. So yeah, so it was my chance of giving back, and that's really what motivates me to work with that group and push it forward. So that's
cool.
that's kind of how I got where I am on both sides, whether it's crypto or the sustainable lifestyle and raising grass fed beef and living on a farm.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of want to. I wanted to ask you. So, how did you go from Nashville? I guess you were living in Nashville to
Yes.
where you are now with your land. Like, what was that process like? Finding the land
Uh,
and everything.
well, there was a woman involved. Which is true. I actually moved down here, not to the farm, but to a house down here to be closer to um, my partner, and then we found some property, bought the property. It took us about 3 years before we were able to build, and she just moved out here and sold her house last summer. So she's been here almost a year, and once she got out here, that's when I really kind of kicked everything in high gear with the farm. And this is where I'm going to be long term. I can't say forever because
Yeah.
I am and I had a discussion with her and my sister who just visited this weekend, and she's actually my older sister, and it's like I enjoy what I'm doing. It's keeping me young, but there is a point where handling cattle is not for somebody who is 85 years old.
Hey,
there is
man.
there is going to be a point where I go, this may not be, where and there's a lot of ways around that, right? You can
Hey,
hire
yeah,
people.
maybe you get like a little robo dog and you're in your house and you're controlling the robo
Yeah.
dog to move the cattle or something.
And the thing is similar to crypto. It's if I find the right person, 15, 20 years from now, or probably before then, that this is their passion too, and I'm passing something along to them because I don't have any children of my own. My partner has a couple children, but they might not be interested in it. But it's like, and that was one of the things when I moved here is you know I don't want this to be my legacy, like I'm going to put my name on the farm and it's going to live in perpetuity. But the things I do to the land, 100, 150, 200 years from now, somebody's going to go, well, who planted that tree? And how did this pond get there? And what's the story behind this? And you know what I'm saying? It's like you
Yeah,
have an impact beyond your own life.
right.
And that might be, to some people, that might seem vain, but when you get older, it does start to mean something, and do meaningful things that last longer than your brand new car or
Yeah.
whatever you have, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's something in the back of my mind as well.
That's one of my favorite quotes. I think it's from one of the Greek philosophers that said that, or somebody said it, but they said society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they may never rest under.
Yeah, and that really is the quote that kind of motivated me because it's exact. And I just planted a bunch of trees. I planted a bunch of 5 chestnut trees and 2 ginkgo trees and a mulberry tree this past week. So I'm just planting things like that. I've got an orchard that I planted 3 years ago. So, you know, I think because, as you travel around rural America, and especially in this part of the country, these all used to be family farms, and they're not there anymore. And these family farms used to have their own orchard because that was part of their sustainability program. They had things that now they're all big farms. The orchards are ripped out to make more room to plant more or more pasture, and the homesteads are gone. And the thing that it's not a sad thing, it's actually causes me to think a little bit when you're driving around in rural areas and you see these daylilies popping up in a field, and those were all planted where there was a home and a homestead around there. And they'll be in a square or they'll be in a line. It's like somebody planted those.
Yeah.
And it's an abandoned field. There hasn't been anybody living there for 50 years or 100 years. And it's like, this used to be a homestead, or this used to be where somebody lived. Um, so yeah, it's not necessarily sad. It's just like, yeah, there were people before me on this land, and they they did it for survival. It was their life. Me, I'm fortunate enough to do this not as a hobby. I take it much more serious than a hobby, but I don't have to depend it on it for my very own survival. I'm fortunate enough not to have to at 62, live off the land literally,
Yeah.
the way people used to be. I try to be as sustainable as possible, but thank God I don't have to.
Yeah, and that's
People tend to idealize that and living off the land, but it is very hard, especially the older you get. Now, when you're younger,
yeah.
it is a young man's game, but when you get older, it's a little more difficult. And
Yeah.
but that's kind of where I come in on that. I try to basically be as good to the earth as I can, and it'll take care of me and sustain me as much as I probably need to, so
Yeah, well, the planting the trees part, if you have a lot of perennials, those things, if you set it up like in permaculture
sure.
techniques and using swales and things, you make them pretty drought tolerant,
Right,
and
right.
you really can be hands off for the most part with that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and like the chestnuts, I planted them along a fence row in my pasture because I don't have a lot of trees in my pasture, and this is kind of going to be natural shade for the cows on the west side of the pasture, which gets the western sun, which is pretty brutal in the summertime. So it'll be kind of a screen for them and provide them shade. And chestnuts are, that's deer food, which hopefully they'll eat the chestnuts and not go to my orchard.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of permaculture techniques you can use on farms, and that's one of the things I did before. I was here a couple of years. I owned the property a couple of years before I really did anything. I put in an access road and then saw how the water, that's basic permaculture technique. Watch how the water flows across the property, and it's somewhat hilly. Well, it's actually quite hilly in parts. And then I knew I wanted to raise cattle, so I needed a couple extra ponds. So I found the ideal place to put ponds where there was already drainage, and so yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. I use the water from another pond that was here when I bought the property, and use a siphon system, which is a project we're all going to do as a group here shortly, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks. It's just I get projects after projects, and that one, since I don't necessarily need it today, I kind of keep pushing it off. I've got a chicken coop to build that we need to do, and some other stuff, but but yeah, I use the water from that pond with a siphon system, so it uses no energy. It's just gravity flow.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's great.
Feed probably a third of my property. The other third is actually on grid tide water, and the other third is going to be based on a pond. So 2/3 of it is just from natural rainfall and pond capture. So
Wow, that's
um,
great.
yeah, so it's a little extra work to do it that way, but be great to have pressurized water all over your property and just but it's number one, it's expensive. Number two, it's you're depending on a water system to exist past whatever catastrophe might happen. So
Right.
um, it's a sustainable thing using the water that falls on your property to water your cattle. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's there's a lot of things that on the farm you can do. I'm by no means I've studied permaculture. I try to
That's what
be
I was gonna
mindful.
ask. Is did you draw inspiration from anyone in particular for your farm?
Well, the first one obviously was Joel Salatin, which I think through the paleo journey I went on, he intersected with that because that's the first time I ever heard of, grass-fed beef and that it was good for you. And then he was obviously a big proponent of that. And then this has been 10, 15 years ago. And so I started paying attention to him, got a couple of his first couple books that he wrote about farming and raising cattle, and that was long before I owned any property. But I knew in the back of my mind, 10 or 15 years ago, that that's what I wanted to do, and so I, you know, methodically made it happen.
Man,
Happen.
he has been an inspiration for a lot of people, and I got to meet him at the Rogue Food Conference
Yeah.
in Lewisburg, Tennessee, and I just fanboyed out, man. I just like
Well, I'm sure everybody did.
I shook his hand and said, you've been such a big inspiration, but it was like, I couldn't come up with anything else to say. It was just,
Yeah. Well,
he means a
he's
lot to a
he's
lot of people.
he's an inspirational guy. He speaks well and he connects with people on a level that I think is hard for most speakers to do. So that's his great gift, and he's a great storyteller, which most good speakers are storytellers. So
Well, yeah,
he's
and they never said die. That they had a never say die attitude when the government tried to put different regulations
right.
down on them. They just figured out different ways, creative ways to get around it. One of the
Yeah,
examples that he gave was for building permits for having people stay on their farm. It either needed to be like a tree house or something connected to the water or something like that. So they built
yeah,
like a structure by a pond or something and said it was like a floating house or whatever. And then
right,
they built something that had a tree connected to it or it was by a tree. So they just like, use creative ways to get around the system
right.
essentially.
Right, but he just he inspired me. I'm trying to think of he's the main person, and then when I got more specifically into grass-fed beef, then I gravitated towards Greg Judy, which he's a big grass-fed farmer, grass-fed beef rancher, actually in Missouri, and he was able, even beyond what Joel taught, really got some really detailed videos on YouTube, and his books are really good. And his and he's got a pretty interesting philosophy about what he does, and it all started clicking, and I just couldn't wait to do it myself. It's like this makes sense. This is the way it should be. Industrialized farming and commercial agriculture are something. Funny enough, I was born on a farm in Illinois.
Oh, that was another question I had was if you had farming in your family.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Just for a little historical, my grandfather was a German immigrant. He moved to the United States in 1928, I believe. He was actually fought for the Germans in the First World War. And as if you know your history of Germany, they went through a severe depression,
Yeah.
following that war, and he came to the United States. And back then, as with almost every immigrant community from the beginning of the colonies to today, regardless, is you don't just go to another country and not know anybody. There are communities of your ethnic type or whatever it might be there, and so he moved to Illinois into farm country there, and he there was a family or a couple families that had moved over, decades before and established in farms there, and then they would bring young men from Germany over to work as field hands, and then they would earn their own piece of land. It was kind of like their own system that they had, and so he ended up with 80 acres of farmland in Illinois, and then they had my father. He's an only child, so uh, he grew up on the farm, and
So
married my mom.
kind of like a sharecropping kind of thing, I guess, is that what they would call
Not
that?
not sharecropping. You literally own the land. You just you kind of worked your way into uh, a position of owning property, and um, it's kind of interesting because the whole community around you were Germans. I mean, the whole area were German immigrants. So there's 80 acres available over here, and so and as with most ethnic communities, they help each other,
Yeah.
and that's very common. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You're kind of seeing some of that come back because I know Paul Wheaton, he has a program called the SKIP program called Skills to Inherit Property. And he
mhm.
found that there are a lot of people that have land that are becoming older and they may not have family that wants to carry on what they're doing. And
Right.
they're trying to connect people that will be caretakers of that land and have the appropriate skills to carry that forward. And so he's starting that, and it's kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's I think I've heard him talk about that, and that's a really worthy thing because the average age of farmers is in their late 60s now, and most children don't want to take over the farm because it's all in a commercial, industrialized agricultural frame, and that's just debt and lots of uh, lots of money, and commercial farmers are they're just really renting their land to industry. They have no control over the inputs. They have no control over the output price. They're just using their land to make money, and they're just trying to survive. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and
Uh,
we're seeing some of the ramifications of that now with maybe
sure,
shortages of fertilizer this season.
sure.
You doing traditional agriculture might come to bite us in the butt.
Well, and it will, in one form or another. Will that push people to be more sustainable? Well, I think it's already happening. It it's gotten a lot better. People are more open to the different techniques, but um, when the farmer's profit and loss depends basically on um, uh, government subsidy, it's kind of hard to deal with and be completely sustainable.
Right. I do see a lot more people being interested in at least having some chickens in their backyard, growing a little bit of their own food
Mhm.
and just making an effort towards being more self-reliant in that regard. At least getting started with stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's a big step, and people like, well, you only, maybe get a dozen or two eggs a week or whenever, and if you sell it, you can only sell them for like $3 a dozen or whatever, and are you really making any money? Are you really making any headway? And the way I look at it, and it's something that during my journey, that I became to come to realize, and I'm sure I've heard it many different people say it many different ways, but um, the easiest way to change the world is how you spend your money and what you spend your money on,
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
and who you spend it with. Um, that'll have more impact than any vote you'll ever cast for any politician or any election. Who you spend your money with. Do you buy a bunch of Chinese made crap? Do you buy support local businessmen as opposed to the Walmart? Do you buy from a farmer and buy their produce or their meat or eggs or whatever? That changes the world incrementally for the better. Although, you go, well, how can it possibly do? Well, it's got to start somewhere. That's one less dollar that the industrial food system gets. So that is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, and if people start taking that mindset, and I'm not a proselytizer or evangelizer of things like that, but because really to make those changes, you have to absorb them yourself and really take that to heart. You
You're
can't.
right.
Somebody can't bully you into doing it, or persuade you to do that. That's got to be something that you have to connect on and go, yeah, I'm not going to buy that crap anymore.
Yeah, I think once people can kind of get that, maybe when that switch goes off in their head that, like, hey, if I grow, every bit of this food that I grow is dollars I don't have to spend, and it's
Hmm.
becoming economical for me to do this, and
Right.
that's just one entry point to somebody's mind is like, okay, well, it's starting to make sense for me to be more frugal with my spending this way, and
Right. And some people are like, some people are all or nothing people when they think about things. It's like, well, either I have to be totally sustainable and totally self-sufficient, or it doesn't count, or they have the weird way of thinking. But it's great if you can do it, but some people won't take that journey because they don't think they can get to the end, and it's not about getting to the end. It's about just incrementally doing something every day.
yeah,
And I hope that people understand that. I mean, it's kind of the world we live in, the all or nothing, you know political divide, black versus, black and white, up or down, left or right. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, life is much more complicated and complex than, you've got to do it exactly this way, and everything you do on your farm has to have a permaculture principle behind it. Ideally, ideally it would, but if it doesn't, and this is a step you need to get there, or you might not get there completely, but it's better than using pesticides and fungicides and chemical fertilizer, and at least you've taken a step in the right direction. And that's,
yeah,
it's it doesn't have to be this grand scheme of 100%. I mean, some people want to be, and that's an honorable pursuit,
yeah.
you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the average person can't possibly do that with, it's just, it won't work for them.
Well,
But they can do something.
yeah, and I see a lot of folks, and that's what I try to tell folks is like, if you start looking at it and you want to do like, try to be grow all your own food and all that, you're gonna get overwhelmed,
Hmm.
and you
You
gotta
absolutely will.
just start with that one garden bed and just
Right.
plant some
Right.
things and just or one thing and just get started that way.
And I think that's just maybe the culture we kind of have grown up in, and whether it's my generation or your generation, it's like, if you tell somebody, it's probably going to take you 10 years to really start becoming self-sufficient, and that your farm or your garden will be really productive and really you'll have all the techniques down and you'll be able to store and prepare your food. You can't do it in a season. You can't do it in 2 or 3 or 4 seasons.
I
If you
know.
do, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment, and you're
Yeah.
just going to say, "Oh, with it."
I know.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've figured that out myself, and trying to get that across to other people. I know, like, like like a couple of my good friends and coworkers. I try to tell them, start something, because if you're trying to, if you get in a pinch or whatever, and you don't even know how to have a little garden, how are you gonna be able to grow enough to make it through a bad situation? Um,
right, right,
but
yeah,
getting that through to people is a little tricky. But that's why I
right.
say just start with small, with something.
Yeah, yeah. Don't want, don't try to be, the ideal homestead in 2 or 3 years. It's like, no, just really, because there are no shortcuts, because every property is different, every climate is different, every microclimate is different on from place to place on my farm. There's different spots. There's soil changes from one, so there's no prescription that, and that's the thing. Sometimes people get carried away with permaculture principles, and it's like, well, you need to do this, this, and this. It's like, that's not going to work on my farm, because my farm's like this, as opposed to a platform, and that works great there, or use this or grow this. It's like everybody's individual, and it is trial and error, because if you don't if you don't sustain some failure, then you're really not learning that much about your land, because if you're successful, kind of like going to Vegas. The first time you put a quarter in the slot machine, you win $100. It's like, I got, I got this baby. Let's start throwing the money in there.
Yeah,
It's
that's how they
just
get you.
it's and fortunately, or unfortunately, in some instances, raising a garden and farming and doing stuff like that is it's there's a lot of failure up front. Because if you don't come from a farming background, which I don't really, I mean, my family did, but I was, in
you,
diapers when we left the farm, right? I wasn't raised and worked on a farm
yeah, you
growing up.
didn't kind of get to apprentice on the farm or whatever.
Right. So, what do I know? Well, I saw something on YouTube and it looks like it's going to work,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
that was in North Dakota, and southern Tennessee. It's like it doesn't quite work. And sometimes, people don't understand that. It's like, this guy's growing that. That's great, That doesn't grow down here, Or
yep,
back where I'm from in Michigan, we used to raise cherries. Well, they won't grow for doodly squat down here, So
yeah,
um, everybody, so it's such a trial and error thing that, to be successful at, you do have to kind of embrace that, though. You
yeah,
have to embrace your failures and go, okay, well, at least I know. As long as you're honest with yourself and you go, well, that was kind of on me because I screwed it up, and instead of just saying, oh, this is never going to work. It's like, analyze your failures, don't do it again, find out ways to improve. I mean, that's but that's kind of the way life is, right? And
yeah.
farming and gardening and being sustainable is the same way.
Yeah, and defining success is a big thing too. I think in our culture, like success can mean a lot of different things for uh but our culture is kind of like success means you got to have the car, you got to have the girl, you got to have the house, you got to have all this stuff, but
Yeah,
you don't know how to grow food. you
yeah,
know
right. You know?
So
And that's a good thing and something to take pride in, that you worked through the difficulties of figuring how it works, and figured out what your land needs and what your climate needs, and a lot of what's funny, the mistake a lot of people make, myself included, it's like, well, I'm going to plant some cabbage and some tomatoes and some green beans and corn and all this other stuff. And then, well, I don't really eat that much of
yeah,
that, but
yeah, yeah. I was talking
when
to
it
somebody about
grows,
that today. Yeah.
it's like, I got all this corn and I really don't like corn,
Yeah.
It doesn't digest well for me. So why did I grow 3 rows of corn, 50 feet long? I got more corn than I can ever. I don't want to even preserve it because I don't even eat that much. It's a lot of work for nothing. So don't plant any corn,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I talked to somebody
So
about that today because it's like that was one lesson I learned too. Is like you grow all this stuff and it's like we don't even eat any of this stuff. So
right, right, and one of the things, in our group, and something that we all understand, that you know that if something were to happen, if things get really bad, um, you need some level of community to survive. And even when things aren't difficult, you can still sit there and go, okay, Bob's really good at growing tomatoes, and I'm really good at growing X, Y, Z. And it's like, why am I trying to grow tomatoes?
right,
Because he does a much better job. And during tomato season, he's just giving them away because
right.
he has so many. So it's the abundance of what you can grow and share with your neighbor. It's kind of like zucchini. It's like, who grows zucchini? People are giving it away because it grows so easily, right?
It does, yeah. In
Like,
this
I
area,
got a
yeah,
zucchini. This is big, because I forgot that it was under the vines. So it's all good. But that, again, that's kind of, excuse me, I'm gonna make sure I got enough power here.
all right.
Um, uh, yeah, I was like, why is my battery not charging? I can't get my charger, so I got two laptops next to each other, charging each other,
Oh
and
wow,
whatever.
yeah,
And my phone, so I'm in a different part of the house than I'm normally in. Um, but yeah, that sharing of resources and finding out what somebody else does. Like, I raise grass fed beef, and there's a number of people in our group that, hey, when they're ready, let me know.
yep,
Because you know what, it's a big undertaking. And do I do much outside that? I don't have much of a garden.
yeah,
I grow pumpkins because I can sell those in the fall at festivals and make some decent money. But other people are much better at growing things than me. Um,
I,
so
and
uh,
I really think that animals, just having and growing animals is a big deal. Like it's a lot easier to raise animals, I think, than to grow a garden. And in
right,
fact, maybe your garden can be supplemental feed for your animals.
right, right, and animals take a certain, obviously take up much more room than a garden,
Yeah,
especially if you're talking beef cattle.
right.
Um, so you share resources and what you have available on your farm and what you do good, and then you just find people, like-minded people, and that's what these groups are all about, right? I mean, they're
Yep.
like-minded people. um you know
Yeah, I'll
but
tell you, I was talking to a friend today, and between the time that we started the local Freedom Cell group and maybe a year before, I was, a lone guy, like thinking I'm the only one that thinks this way, and it's kind of a bummer. But
right,
having the group has been so great.
right, and I even, in our Telegram channel last week, before our meeting, we were talking. Somebody, I guess one of the members is selling their homestead and moving into an intentional community, and I just kind of make the offhand uh, comment is like, well, I could never live in an intentional community because I really don't like people that much.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
people, when people hear that, I think some people are like, well, that's kind of rude, or that's kind of, what's his problem? But I don't particularly like the company of a lot of different people that I don't have anything. In intentional community, you do have things in common with people.
Yeah, you
Uh,
have to, I think, to make it work, but
right,
it's not
but
it's not easy to live in a community with other
but even
people.
even even then, it's like for me, it's a little too close.
Yeah.
It's too, yeah. And it's what I said. I'm more of a transactional person. It's like you have something to offer me. I have something to offer you. Um, we can be friends.
Right.
We share the same interests, but um, we don't have to be hanging out all the time together.
Right.
Because you're eventually going to get on my nerves, and I'm going to get on your nerves because that's just the nature of people.
Yeah.
Well, the, the majority of people, and when I lived in Nashville, I still have to go back there to work, and this is like, it's like I don't want to be around all these
I'll
people.
I'll be there next week. And
Right.
I
It's like
understand because it
and
is
and
stressful up there with all the
right.
traffic especially.
Right, and people are, in their, metal caskets driving down the road, just,
Trying to
not
run you off the road.
not caring. It's the ability for people like that to literally not care about anything around them, and their surroundings. And I guess that's when I say I don't like people, because at least in this day and age, people walk around in a bubble, and they will do and act any way they feel without regard to the people around them. It's like, it's not even rude anymore. It's just I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. The city's kind of draining on people, but we
Yeah,
can shift gears a little bit
yeah,
here.
sure.
You said we got a little bit limited time tonight, but I wanted to shift gears and talk and get into your guys' podcast with the TradfitoDefi.
Yes.
So, what would you suggest somebody that might be looking into cryptocurrencies? Like, should they come and check out your guys' podcast? Like, do you guys give some tools on like how you can wrap your head around it, how you can get started in crypto, what's
Yeah,
what it's
yeah.
all about?
In the first, that was how we started. We started with some real basic, what is crypto, what is a blockchain, some real basic stuff to kind of give you an idea why is this technology important, and then we go into some more specifics. And they're good podcasts. They're some of the first ones we did, so they're probably not super polished. They're short, though. We make them short on purpose because it's not conversational. It's just like, let's get the information out. So they're like 15 minutes long, and when people are trying to absorb information, they don't have much attention span past that anyway. But yeah, I mean, especially if somebody's wanting to get into, and our group again is geared a little bit more for people who have some financial background. It's not required, but you know, when you're dealing with a digital money, you better know how the money actually works, right?
Yeah,
And that will go a long way to learning some things. It's like, know how money actually works, and you don't have to be super detailed, but understand the money system we have. And yeah, we all know that it's corrupt, but you have to take a step back from that sometimes and say, well, how does money flow from a bank to a person borrowing money, and how is debt created, and stuff like that? Because in the crypto industry, you'll find the same thing, um, and people, and I have some disagreements with people basically on philosophy of some things, and that's okay. And I think people should, be able to disagree on how things work. But crypto isn't. this great invention, yeah, it can replace the current currency and take away a lot of the things that are wrong with it. But it's still money. Still takes some responsibility on your end to secure it because crypto is it's up to you to keep track of your money and keep it secure, not the bank.
Right.
Uh, that's one of the things. It's like, okay, before we start, there's going to be some additional responsibility that you're probably not used to having when it comes to your money,
Exactly.
and you're going to find that onerous. You're going to find it like, well, how do I get my money back? You messed up and it's not coming back because you didn't take care of what you were supposed to be doing. Um, that's hard for people to understand because they've lived in a money system where the government, the banks, credit card companies, whoever, there was always a way to bail yourself out most of the times if somebody took advantage of you, you
Right.
know. um, FDIC insurance at a bank on your bank accounts, whatever it might be. And this is kind of all on you, and that's one of the first things you need to understand is um, when you get into this realm. Yes, it's new, it's exciting, it's innovative. You can make money, but it's going to as it currently stands, and it will be that way. The security that you have to do is getting better, and to help you along the way. But it's still evolving and it's going to get better and it's going to be more user friendly. And it's early on in a technological innovation that sometimes, it might not work exactly the way you want it to, like early computers and,
Right.
drag,
Right. Yeah,
you
when
know,
you had to know a little bit of basic programming to even operate the
right,
computer in the
right.
beginning. Yeah.
You know, before Windows, you had the disk operating systems that were all, command line instructions,
My
to load a program.
Yeah, my dad tells me stories of when they had to take these little punch card
Right,
systems to load into the computer to run the program they wanted
right,
to run. So it's
right.
not
So
that. It's not that. But-
no, no, but in the same way, it's because it's at such an early stage of a new technology, um, that there's gonna be those things that 10 years from now is like, remember when we had to, have those little hardware wallet things there where we had to punch in a code and, all that technology is going to get better. It's going to be easier. It's going to be safer. So, there's risks involved, but, there always is when you're the first people out of the block to use a new technology. And likewise, when I say you can make money at it, there are opportunities because it is new, to invest your money wisely or not wisely. um, and the reason that exists is because it is new. I've heard a lot of people, well, I'm interested in it, but I'm going to wait, 4 or 5 years until it really kind of catches on and it's more mainstream. It's like, well, at that point, the ability to make money from it is going to kind of start to disappear, because it's kind of like, well, I'm going to wait till I can get a savings account that pays 2 or 3%. It's like, okay, if that's what you're going to wait for. um, you know, and not everybody else not everybody is able to risk very much money. So there's nothing wrong with that approach.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would be like a tip for somebody that, or what would you say to somebody that does have all their eggs in the traditional market basket? I guess
I, I,
is a dollar cost averaging kind of the
yeah, yes, I would,
strategy?
and it really all depends, because this is kind of bordering on financial advice.
Yeah,
But it
not
really,
financial advice.
right. But it depends on where you are in your career, in your life. Somebody at my end of the spectrum, it would be like, I would be fairly conservative, because your working years to make up any losses are limited
Right.
at that point, you probably have some money. If it's earlier on in your life, I'd say, I would say be quite risky, quite take the risks, and to put a number at it, I said, maybe somebody my age, it's like, okay, to start out with, just take, 5% of what you have in your 401k plan and buy one thing and like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That would be a great first investment. Obviously, that would most people would tell you that. So I'm not really giving you any financial advice there, but and guess what? Don't do anything for 6 months and just follow it. Don't trade it. Don't try to time the market. Don't try to do anything. Or if you want a dollar cost average and buy, $50 a week or $50 a month, whatever you can afford, um, and just kind of learn before you get crazy and start, and that gives you time to learn and research and um, and be and when I say and don't do anything, I mean don't do anything because
Yeah.
along along the way, when you're researching and you're going to be reading Twitter and you're going to be on this site and this social media, and they're going to say, hey, invest in this and invest in that, and you're going, well, this sounds like a really great thing. I'm going to take some of the money I was put in Bitcoin and buy this. And then it's like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's why I say like
Yeah,
six
yeah.
6 months. Give yourself that much time to, you know,
Yep.
read about something, follow it for even a couple weeks, and you're going to go, oh, okay, oh, it went like that. It's like, well, that wouldn't have been a good thing. Good thing I didn't put money in that, and learn from those mistakes before you're actually using your own money
And,
as you're doing your research.
yeah, yeah, and it is the crypto space can be full of a lot of scammers, so that's something to be
Yes,
aware of.
yes, especially if you're well, it's almost impossible not to be on social media because really that's where a lot of the information comes from, the timely information. But unfortunately, that's replete with people who want to take your money as well. That's unfortunate, but again, that's that part of being responsible.
Yeah,
You
so
you got to know what's going on. You got to be, as wise as a fox, and you can't let people take your money away from you.
yeah, so what are some tips to avoid scammers? Maybe some basic tips for people if they
Um,
wanted to
don't
start.
um, don't respond to anybody who contacts you on social media that you don't previously already know. Hey, I'm Bob, and I understand you own Cardano, and that's really interesting for me. You want to talk about it, and I got this way to double your money, and it's like it's just be very careful about anybody you even begin to talk to on social media about that, especially definitely somebody that you don't know,
Right.
because that's where they get you. It's like they're like, oh, or um, another.
I've even seen it in projects Telegram groups where
Oh,
they'll have
the
scammers
Telegram's horrible.
inside their Telegram groups trying to get you to go to
Yes,
their website
yes.
to move your crypto through their wallet or something like that.
Well, unfortunately, because of the stage that the industry is in, it's not like there's a lot of help. In the traditional Web 2 world, there's a help desk or customer service for the application. Say, hey, it's not working. Can you help me? Sure, we'll help you. And so a lot of the help you get online is through social media, and you'll go to Telegram and to the official Telegram channel for a particular protocol and say, hey, I just moved my money from here to here and I'm not seeing what I think I'm supposed to be seeing. Can somebody help me out? And somebody will send you a message and say, hey, I can help you out.
Yep.
Don't, because almost all these telegrams the people that the people that are assigned to help people in those Telegram channels are, they will not send you a message. That's their policy. We do not contact you. You contact us,
Right.
because I'm the designated person on the site that can give help.
Yep.
They'll never ask you for, just like me, I'll never ask you for passwords and stuff like that, because that's just a dead giveaway. And that's just learning. And you'll see, this happens to me all the time. I have this a couple Telegram groups that I'm in. That's the name of the protocol, such and such, trading group, or such and such official page. And somebody will inevitably, one of these scam groups will have the same name for the same group. But you look on there and there's like hardly any messages, where the other ones, like every time you turn on, there's like 200 messages you have to get caught up on. But if you're in a hurry, and they'll hit you with something like, "Hey, did you know we're doing an airdrop today at 2 o'clock? Send us your address. We're giving away $1 million or something." And like it almost got me one time. It's like, is this the group I was in? It's like, I didn't hear about this. And I'm like looking and looking. I'm like, there's no other people really responding here. All of it's kind of like when you read Amazon reviews, it's like,
Oh
okay,
yeah, and they have like
yeah,
a bunch of weird
yeah, it's like, okay, wait a second. This sounds like
it
you just
has
cut
nothing to do with the product or
right,
whatever.
so yeah, so unfortunately, you have to do that. Just be very aware of that. We do have on our Discord group, we have a operational security and safety, um, part
Pro-
of our channel. And
protocols or whatever.
right, just steps to take, or if you, and when people will report stuff there, and there's people that have actually lost money that were in the group, and it's like, man, I can't believe I fell for this. Be careful of that. They'll post. We have a scam page for scams that are going on. So um, they might not. They're not all of them, but there's just ones that people in the group ran across, or heard about, and we share it that way, because that's really the way. And before. And I could probably hang on for a little bit longer, but if you decide to go to our Discord group, I mean, certainly join there. That's probably the best way to join. There's a lot of information there, and we can help you out there, and
Is that
just
kind of your public facing thing? Is that Discord
yeah,
group?
yeah. The Telegram is kind of invite only, and it's kind of private, because there's a lot of people on there that are actually doing uh, venture capital deals, are starting their own protocols. So it's fairly. I don't want to sound like you wouldn't get it, but a lot of people actually conduct business there, and so it's kind of small on purpose.
Okay.
Um, but if you're in the Discord channel and you're interested, you'll probably end up getting invited. But it's kind of one of those things
It's
that
kind of a vetting process a little bit.
yeah, well, and when we first started out, we said, we want, and this is not a personal, comment about anybody, but we want to keep the numbers low, but the quality high. We don't want 2,000 members. We don't want that. I think there's maybe 200. Of those, 50 or 60 are just, people that, are known in the industry, and are some of them are investors. It's a real good group. It's not active all the time, but I mean, well, like yesterday, had my sister was here in her company, so I wasn't on social media for about 6 or 7 hours, and something blew up in crypto, and there's just like 60 or 70 messages, and it's like I never log on to my Telegram, and there's that many. It's just message after message talking about, well, what it was, the Terra Luna, UST depegging, and it was a big issue yesterday. And but these guys actually know people that work for that protocol and have met Do Kwon, who's the founder of Terra, and he says, hey, he's not scamming anybody. He's a really quality guy. So these people that have personal contact with a lot of the founders of these protocols,
Yeah, it's
and
still a pretty small community.
it's very small. It's very small, and so it's people like that have those contacts in the industry. So it's and we're trying to get them to participate more in the podcast and share some of their knowledge, but their time is pretty. People in the industry, it's a 24/7 business.
Yeah, it seems like they don't sleep a whole lot.
No, and they're busy all the time, whether it's on podcasts or conference calls, or so their time's pretty precious, and we don't push them to participate past what they can.
Here's one question I had
Yeah.
with what's going on in the stock markets, and it seems to have also affected. It looks almost like the stock market and crypto are somewhat linked, and it seems to me that maybe some people are covering some of their losses, maybe in the stock market by selling off some cryptos. Do you have any ideas on that?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, and that's something that I try to tell people. They're not necessarily all that open to hearing that, but the crypto industry has gone from its ardent followers, the people that have been with Bitcoin for forever, and they're just uh, they really love the protocols. There's a lot of there's institutional money in there. The majority of it is becoming institutional. So when institutions move their money in and out of the stock market, they do the same thing with crypto. They just see it as another risk asset. It's just like buying Nvidia stock or buying another high tech stock. They put it in the same category, risk category. But you're right. What you just suggested happens as well. Is because these institutions use a lot of leverage. When they have to cover their losses, they have to sell other assets to pay for it.
Yeah,
And sometimes those are crypto assets.
right.
there's there's a lot of leverage that's used in the crypto industry, and when people get a margin call because prices drop, they have to sell their other crypto assets. That's why the whole thing goes up and down together, because it's like, well, I'm losing money in Bitcoin, so I have to sell my Ethereum in order to cover my losses over here because I borrowed on margin.
Yeah.
And that's what I say by investors have a huge impact on the way, the direction the market goes. And people, well, we're in a super cycle, or it's the halvening of Bitcoin, and it always goes up after that. And it's just, and there's these cycles that have been true for the past 10 years or 12 years.
But we're kind of in interesting times right
We're in a
now.
new world where there's all this institutional money that makes the prices go up and down. And I think some people are getting caught off guard by that, because as well as I do, there are many people last year. It's like by the end of the year, Bitcoin's going to be over 100,
Yeah.
you know, many respected people. And they were wrong. And it's, it's about 35 right now, went up to 60. And it's like, that's been a long time ago.
Right.
Well, not in crypto years.
Yeah, yeah. In crypto years is a long time, but
Right. It
but
might have only been 6 months ago, but hey.
yeah,
Um,
because the market moves like crazy. Yeah, it can be the
but
crazy
but
rides up
but
and
yeah,
crazy rides down too.
yeah. Well, and that's just the macroeconomic conditions affect everybody, and crypto is coupled with the traditional markets. There's and if you want any prognostication from me, I don't see that changing very soon. There's nothing on the horizon that is telling me that well, it's going to change unless the macro market changes itself, right? Unless the all the markets go up, well, crypto is going to go up. But for them to break free of that market, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen um, too soon. So you just have to kind of wait it out. But
Don't don't yeah, sell your house and put all the money in.
no,
Yeah.
no, unless you do that to put it in the stock market, because it's it's even more riskier than that, and on another note, and I guess it's just general market commentary, and this is not because I do own Bitcoin, but I think people get carried away with the narrative too many times, um, because people are like, oh, Bitcoin is now legal tender in El Salvador and then Panama and the Central African Republic and at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, Jack Mallers is like, Strike is going to be on every POS system out there, point of sale system, and all these retailers are going to have the ability to accept. And it's like, they're under the Kevin Costner Field of Dreams scenario of build it and they will come, which is to some extent true. But you can have Bitcoin accepted at every retail outlet. It can actually be legal tender in every country in the world. But if people aren't willing to use it,
Right.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I don't see people all of a sudden going, well, Bitcoin, that's the answer to everything. But people on the inside see that, right? People who know what Bitcoin's about see that. And it's like, of course it is. But to get mass adoption of grandma and the guy down at the bar, and
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? You've got to have a lot of people adopt these payment methods, and it's not going to happen overnight,
Right.
and you can make it available and you can make it easy to use, but that's a foreign idea, I think, for people to take. Well, my dollars, I just choose dollars, right? Well, no, you have to buy Bitcoin and then use that in this transaction, and people aren't ready for that now with the the crumbling macroeconomic conditions and hyperinflation. That can change really quick.
You're right, right. I
That can
believe
change really quick.
I believe there's something called Gresham's law. I think I
Right,
probably learned about it in Mike
right,
Maloney's videos or something like that,
right,
where the bad money
yeah,
or good money pushes out the bad money
right,
after people realize that the money's bad. They all
right,
find the better form of money.
right. And that could happen. That is a scenario in which it could happen.
Right.
Um, so, um, but yeah, I think people kind of got a little ahead of themselves because they see all these other things happening, which are all good indications of countries, allowing it to be used in their country, and maybe even like in El Salvador, they're trying to sell Bitcoin bonds and finance their government and so on and so forth. And but we're probably not there yet, and I think people are kind of a little ahead of the narrative there, and need to be cautious. I mean, and that's just that's my point of view. Other people would disagree with me,
Yeah.
and and my approach has been for probably the past year, um, is that I, I buy and sell on things that actually generate an income and pay me to own. I want to own things that pay me to own them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the old school, dividend stock. I own this stock and they pay me a dividend,
Right.
because in a market that's I don't want to predict it and say it's not going to go over 100,000 by the end of the year, because if it does, I'll look like an idiot. But I'm in a market that is so tied to the economy. I don't see it turning around that soon. So in the meantime, you might as well invest in things that actually are allowed that will pay you to own them, and that usually happens in a couple different ways. And I don't want to get into technicals of cryptocurrency, but staking your currency with in a protocol, they'll usually pay you to do that, and that's one way. There are DeFi protocols, of, again, beyond the scope of this call, that you can do, but and
Well,
yield
that's
farm.
where your podcast is helpful, or where
Right,
you
and
guys
that's where
kind of get into the weeds on some of those
yes,
things.
yes, and that's where yield. It's called yield farming, and that's just a way of creating an income, uh, as opposed to just buy something and hope that it goes up in value.
Yeah, number
Which
goes up.
right, and obviously it hasn't.
Right,
Recently, and it may not in the future for a period of time, or it may tomorrow turn around, and I wouldn't be surprised either way. But that's just me. That's my philosophy. That's what and that's anything with investing. It's like you just got to do something you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable putting your money at risk, then don't. You know.
yeah, do your own research.
Yes, yes, and don't because John says so. That's a good reason. Well, make sure you find out for yourself, and if that fits your time frame, your horizon. If you're 25 years old and you've got 50 years before you retire, or 30 or 40 or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if you're somebody like me, and you've only got, I probably have 3 years to actually earn an income from a job before I actually retire. Like I said, there's the chance of recovering from a disaster is very limited, right?
Right,
If you make a bad decision. So
right.
when you're younger, you can recover because you got your whole life ahead of you to work. Sucks, but
Well,
you not
hopefully
that
you
you have to work,
find
but that you lose money.
you
I
have to
mean,
find some way to make money.
yes,
Yeah,
you do, you do.
because that's the world we live in.
Yes, it is. It is. But yeah. So I mean, those are just some bits of advice. Um, find people that also find people that you can trust, and it's if it the old saying, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. That usually is very applicable. It's happened to me a couple times, and I thought I was making really good money, and it turned around on me. I'm like, wow, that kind of hurts. But it was money I thought I made, but I really didn't, because it was just not a good setup. It wasn't a good protocol, and that happens. And I'm an experimenter. I want to, and that's how I learn. I'll take a little bit of money and put it over here and see how it does, and then figure out why it did or didn't, and then go, okay, well, I learned something there. This is how
Yeah,
it works. You have to kind of
you
be
have to kind
attentive.
of look at it that way, I think, because you can kind of get down, and if I hear a lot of people talk about, if I had just invested in this and
Right.
held on to it for a little while and then sold it at the right time, but you can kick yourself like that for days on all kinds of stuff.
Well, and I think a lot of people come to the industry also just because of the legends of Bitcoin investors and how they've made so much money. Oh, I bought Bitcoin when it was $10, and now it's $60,000, and I'm a multimillionaire. And the chances of it doing that again is almost zero. To get that fantastic return, and that kind of lottery ticket money.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like it's almost easy come, easy go
Yeah,
for a lot of people too. Because if you happen to come in a lot of wealth, that's easy to get. That
it
maybe
leaves
you
you.
don't take care of. Yeah, it can leave you easily too. So
Yeah, so yeah, people come into it maybe sometimes for the wrong reasons, but to get rich. Certainly you can, as people have done it, but
be
that shouldn't be your goal right away. It's sure to learn how things work, and then devise a strategy after, say, 6 months of, this is how I'm going to go from $100 to $1,000 in the next year, and then the next year, this is how I'm going to go from it's because it's only a 10x, right? It's like, and then next year I'm going to go from 1,000 to 10,000, and then from 10,000 to 100,000. And it might not happen in a year, but if you can do it and be methodical and learn, because there's new stuff all the time, that's the way to do it. It's not, I'm going to be a millionaire by the end of the year. No, it's, just turn what you have into a decent return and go, that's pretty good. I did a lot better than the stock market this year, and
Yeah.
then you have more money to play with next year, and then kind of build on it over time.
Awesome.
But it's just investment advice, and it's not financial advice, but it's a method. I'm not telling you what to buy or how much to buy or when to sell or
Like
anything like
a
that.
strategy to keep in mind.
Yeah, and everybody has a different strategy, and that strategy has to be something that you can emotionally and mentally handle, because a long time ago, early in my investing, I wouldn't call it a career, life, you know you have to decide is what will keep you up at night more: the fact that you sold something and it went up 1,000%, or you bought something and it went down the same amount. You know what I'm saying? Is missing out on being rich going to crush you more than being broke because you lost all your money?
Yeah.
Because some people can't handle that. It kills them, the fact that, well, I sold Apple stock when it was $15, and now I made good money at the time, but if I would have held on to it, I could have retired 10 years ago or something. I mean,
Right.
it keeps people up at night sometimes,
Yeah.
or do you hold on it too long until it crashes, and then I should have I should have sold,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah,
have
that's why I try to read as much as I can and try to
right.
stay up on the markets and maybe learn some technical analysis stuff and
Yep. Well,
just
and
educate yourself as much as possible essentially.
yeah, you have to take as much emotionality out of it, and do it a little more technical, a little more by the numbers. It's like, because that was one of the first things I learned in investing, especially if you're going to try to trade stocks or crypto, is when you buy something, you're buying it for a reason. Know that reason. That is the reason you're buying it, because I'm buying the stock because they're building electric vehicles, or they're going to get into building electric vehicles, and they're going to make a lot of money that way. And that's why you bought the stock, and you bought it for $15 a share, and then then they come out and say, well, we're not going to do electric vehicles anymore. It's like, your whole purpose for buying it was for this, and now that purpose no longer exists. You need to sell and move on, because that narrative, the reason why you're doing it, is no longer there. You're just hanging on, hoping that you can make money based on nothing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because you have to have a reason for doing things. And okay, the reason why I'm buying this, because I think it's going to go from $10 to $15, and I'm going to make 50% return, because I think they're going to have a great year, and this is going to be the year they come out with this next model of Mustang, and it's just going to blow everybody's doors off. They're going to make a ton of money, and then when the sales aren't there, you need to sell, move on. The same thing with crypto. It's like they're coming out with this great new DeFi protocol that is going to do this, this, and this, and it's just the token's going to go through the roof. When that doesn't happen, you got to move on, because the
Yeah.
reason you're owning it no longer exists. And
Yeah,
and
yeah, and there, there is a lot, in the decentralized finance. I mean, the word decentralized,
right,
and with decentralization, there does come some hiccups there, and like it might be slower and a little bit more difficult to use
yes,
sometimes.
yes. And if,
So,
and if the thing, now, like we both are familiar with privacy coins, and
yep,
there's a reason why we buy those,
yep,
because they're They're a privacy protocol, and there's value in that. Now, they'll always be privacy coins. They're not going to be anything but privacy coins. They're a niche. They're a niche coin, and you just have to treat them that way. But but when you're being more speculative about prices going up, and and then it, not that it doesn't, but the whole reason they do, and they have a problem, and the blockchain gets interrupted, and it's like bad tech, and things aren't good, and you're just like, I'm just going to hold on a little bit longer. It's kind of like, hanging on to that girl that dumped you. It's like, man, you got to move
You
on.
gotta let her go. Yeah.
Gotta find a new girlfriend, man.
Yeah. Hey, bro, I know you're in that thing, but you need to start seeing
You need to move
reality.
on, buddy.
Yeah, you need to start seeing
And I
reality.
and you could say that to your friends and kid with them a little bit, but some people, they get really offended when, I mean, you suggest that, maybe this is probably not a good investment for you because it really hasn't turned out well. And, well, I'm just holding on because maybe it's, they got this next thing coming. Well, the last two things they didn't work, and the third one's probably not going to work either. So,
Yeah.
being able to spot things like that, but again, you see how you get emotionally invested in things, and you don't stick with a very strict discipline. You get kind of like emotionally attached to an asset. You know, you should never get emotionally attached to it because you're going to make a mistake. You're going to hold on to it too long, or you're going to get pissed and you're going to sell it at the wrong time. But that again. That's advice on strategy, just steps you can take to be a better investor in anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, John, I know that we kind of run over on time, but
sure.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the show with me. We're recording this on Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. But let you end and let everybody know how they can find TradfitoDefi and how to get in touch with you guys for if they want to dive into some of this decentralized finance stuff and learn more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can try our Discord server. I think you're probably going to put that in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
You can join there. There is also, I think we have a TradFi to DeFi Spotify channel that has some of our podcasts on there. There is also YouTube. We have a YouTube channel for TradFi to DeFi. That's, I think, all one word. But if you search, you'll eventually find it. And we got a kind of weird little icon that on there that is our logo. But yeah, I'm on TradFi to DeFi. My name is Farmer John, so made that fairly easy. And reach out to me. I'll show you around, and we'll get you going. We have a no stupid questions section, so don't be afraid to ask questions there, because we want to help everybody. We're mainly organized for educational purposes, so that's why we're here to help people, and that's why we do what we do. But and Greg, I want to personally thank you for inviting me on and let me share some of my thoughts. Hopefully, some of them are valuable, and people learn something, or whether they agree with me or not. It's not the point, but hopefully it was useful. And reach out to me. Through the Discord channel is probably the best way, and we can talk about just about anything as far as the permaculture and sustainability. Well, I'm just hanging out with the North Alabama. Is it the Garden Club? Is what we call it now?
Yeah, we're the Garden Club. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we got kicked out of some place not too long ago. But anyway, no
Yeah.
shots were fired. It was all peaceful, but hey.
Yeah.
It all good. But thanks again, Greg.
Yeah, John, thank you for taking your time out tonight. So, thanks everybody for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe on the video, and go check out John at TradFi to DeFi. So, thank you again, John, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
All right, brother.